Hey, it's that time of the week. It's time for the Security Token Show. We're your hosts. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Herwig, of course, joined by my co-founder, Kyle. How are you today?
What is going on, Herwig? I am electric. We are 1 week away from Tokenize This, the conference. Another amazing week on the show, episode 235. Man, we've been doing this for so many weeks here in a row.
Well, that's right. It's 1 week away, less than a week away. So obviously there won't be a show next week because we'll be pretty busy. But I do have to say we may have potentially, we'll decide whether we decide to live stream it, Kyle. We'll make you wait a little bit and see if we decide. But look out for something next Thursday and Friday. Big announcements, over 40 speakers, virtually every ATS in the space. The biggest banks, we've got the biggest asset managers and all the blockchains that matter in RWAs. They're at Tokenize This Summit.stm.co. We would love to see you in Miami. With that, Kyle, we've got a bunch of interviews today and an amazing show of news. So let's jump into it with Bitfinex for an interview.
Welcome, everyone, to another Security Token Show interview. Today, we're joined by Jesse Knutson from Bitfinex Securities. How are you, Jesse?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Well, Bitfinex has been leading the charge in El Salvador, a very forward-thinking country when it comes to blockchain. Tell me about your position in the market and what you're looking to accomplish.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think what we're trying to do fundamentally isn't that complicated. We're basically trying to take the technology from the digital asset industry and from Bitcoin and apply that to capital markets. And I think what that yields is a system that reduces friction points and allows for all the benefits of tokenization that we're familiar with. And I think that more mainstream institutional investors are starting to become familiar with as well. So things like global liquidity, real-time settlement, 24/7, 365 trading, and maybe most important of all, the ability for investors to better control their own assets. And I think basically to disintermediate a lot of the parts of the ecosystem that maybe technologically aren't as necessary as they once were, and to allow issuers and investors to interact a lot more directly. As you point out, I think El Salvador has almost uniquely figured out where the economically accretive parts of the digital asset industry are. And I think that boils down to Bitcoin, Tether, and tokenized capital markets. And I think this is interesting because traditional capital markets have been really resistant to change, especially technological change that really over the last 10 or 20 years has profoundly changed all other industries. So there's a really big opportunity here to, I think, to update this technology, the technology behind capital markets, and also to close the gap with legacy financial centers and to really demonstrate how our technology can be accretive economically and move the needle on the ground.
Makes sense to me. And staying on that topic of capital markets, a couple of the most recent announcements include the on-chain bond issuance for the airport hotel, along with microcapital alternative bond. At a high level, can you tell us about these issuances, who can participate, and how you go about the kinds of assets that you'd like to host on Bitfinex Securities?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first issuance you mentioned, the microcapital bond. They're a leader in the microfinancing industry. They're a very seasoned issuer of conventional securities, but this was their first foray into tokenized issuance. They do regular conventional bond issuances, so we hope this over time will develop into doing regular tokenized issuance as well. So they've got quite a bit of scale in the industry. They have more than €1 billion invested. They have 250 portfolio companies, and they operate across 14 separate countries. The product itself was a 10% coupon bond issued by their Luxembourg securitization entity with a 36-month duration. And we got pretty good feedback from investors on this product, so we're really keen to start releasing more of these type of products to market as well. The second issuance you mentioned, the airport hotel issuance, Hill SV, that's a $6.25 million raise. Again, it's a 10% coupon, and it's issued by a developer called Inverlag. And they're looking to build a Hampton by Hilton branded hotel in the San Salvador International Airport. And that'll be the first hotel actually in the airport complex itself. Interestingly, I think the story behind both this issuance and the microfinancing bond is kind of similar. So I think for both of them, It's about small and mid-sized companies that are being completely frozen out of capital markets and that are really struggling to access capital. So we're really excited about, both of these issuances, but especially about the hotel issuance, because we think it's really going to move the needle on the ground, especially in terms of creating infrastructure and creating jobs. So the issuer estimates that during construction, the project will generate 1,000 indirect and direct jobs. And then once it becomes operational, it'll generate 5,000 direct and indirect jobs. So for us, I think this is really a template. And if we can get this right, then we can replicate this in other jurisdictions, in other countries, for other small and mid-sized companies. As to who can invest, our platform isn't open to U.S. residents or citizens, and U.S. persons can't access any of the products on the platform. If you Google Bitfinex Securities, prohibited persons and jurisdictions, you can get more detail on your specific residency and citizenship situation. But it is worth mentioning that most of our previous issuances, all of our previous issuances have been focused on accredited investors. But in El Salvador, we've got quite a bit more flexibility in this regard. And the minimum ticket sizes in El Salvador are much smaller. The smallest I've seen from an approved issuer so far is $100. So we're really excited about this because it opens up access to a much broader range of investors.
100%. That makes total sense, right? You're creating new opportunities here for investment. Access to different types of capital, along with the ecosystem that it's located in, right? So El Salvador, being the ecosystem it is. Curious, as to your point about creating jobs, curious to see the day that, workers are paid in Bitcoin or prefer to be paid in Bitcoin.
Well, if it's going to happen, it's going to definitely happen in El Salvador, I think.
Definitely excited for that. So, while some things may be under wraps still, is there anything that you can share with us on future plans for Bitfinex Securities, whether in El Salvador or outside?
Yeah, as you know, we're regulated and licensed in two separate jurisdictions, in El Salvador, of course, which you just talked about, but also in the AIFC, which is a financial center like the DIFC in Dubai, but based in Astana, Kazakhstan. And I think really it's just a grind. It's about getting more issuances up on the platform and building awareness amongst investors. It's been an interesting year for the industry. We've seen a lot more attention from traditional finance. And I think increasingly it feels like the consensus view is starting to catch up with our vision of tokenization. And I think what's becoming increasingly clear is that this is the direction that capital markets are going to evolve. So it's also encouraging to see, the titans of finance, the big boys like Larry Fink and BlackRock talking more about tokenization. But between here and there, I think there's a lot of work to do. We expect to have a lot more issuances out of El Salvador this year. We're just getting started there. We have a really exciting pipeline of domestic, regional, and overseas issuers in El Salvador. We're looking forward to doing more issuances with microcapital and some other, very exciting, much anticipated projects that I probably can't talk about right now, but I think that we should have some news out in the next probably couple of weeks or months.
Very cool. Well, we're here to track it all. Alternative, the blockchain mining node are already tracked on stm.co. As soon as the El Salvador airport, the HELSIV token starts trading, we'll be tracking that too. But excited for your announcement coming up soon. So do let us know, Jesse. But in the meantime, we'll be transitioning over to the next section of the show. Thank you for coming on and sharing your insights.
Thank you very much.
Watch out for Bitfinex, folks. They are on a tear, I think, doing some cool stuff in El Salvador. And I think, of course, Tether is going to be their secret weapon to scale. But with that, Kyle, wow, what a week in news. You can already tell from the title that we've got some pretty big news about Securitize. A 1-2 punch, if you will. I'm going to start with the one. Kyle will hit you with the two. Number one, folks, it's official. There's a new king in town, a new top dog. The biggest tokenized fund in the space is officially BlackRock's BIDL, which is, of course, on Securitize. This is a big deal because, of course, Benji has been the neck and neck race. Benji being Franklin Templeton's product that's been out in the space for several years now. And in just a little over 40 days or something like that, they've gone ahead. BIDL's gone ahead and overtaken Benji in that 380 plus million mark. Absolutely incredible stuff, Kyle. Did you see this coming?
Look, I think that you did see this one coming, unfortunately. We love Franklin Templeton and how innovative they are, but BlackRock just has such heavy access to capital and liquidity. I think that this was probably only a matter of time. We are, I think, very close, if not have already seen the flipping for BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF as well with Grayscale. They have so much access to capital. They are a dominant player. And cool to see that the treasuries market for tokenized assets is now $1.3 billion, Herwig. This industry is going to continue to grow and is just proving to be a huge use case for security tokens.
Billions more to go, I think, this year alone. It's such a foundation. We've talked about it so many times on the show, and not to toot my own horn, but I actually did call it out from the very beginning when the announcement came out that this could well become the largest fund in the world, and here we are. I think it could become the largest traditional fund if you bring that market in a couple of years, 5 to 10 years as well. We do know. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, I just found the other interesting thing about this article was that Ondo Finance, another large player that has been building a lot of tokenized treasury products, we've covered them on the show many times for their cross-chain integrations, is using the BUIDL asset as their reserve asset. So, depending on, we know that BlackRock is being pretty transparent with their Ethereum applications. Ondo has taken that a step further with all of their DeFi integrations. So it does seem to be that the chain of flows really does connect this all the way to all the other blockchains as well.
You're completely right. That's the linchpin here, because if Ondo were to suddenly decide next week that they're going to switch their reserves to Benji, just like that, you'll have a new king back again with Benji. So, maybe they could split it between the two and make it more of an interesting race. But Ondo for sure is the swing here. And the last thing I do mention is that, we're going to see BUIDL. We've seen Carlos talk about this in the news, the CEO of Securitize, that they are also planning to eventually go cross-chain, which we've seen Benji do as well. A natural part of the expansion in order to grow AUM and tap into different ecosystems. But keep in mind, the one distinction I always like to point out, as we talked about last week, Benji is a retail product, a 1940 Act registered fund. It is doing all the disclosures it needs to do in order to allow anybody to buy Benji versus only those who have, very, very large pockets, multi-million-dollar minimum investments into the likes of BUIDL. That might change one day as well, especially because, again, the company, the platform provider behind BlackRock's BUIDL also announced the very next day this week after they became the biggest fund that they raised a huge amount of money, $47 million, led by BlackRock, once again showing that BlackRock is doubling down both on Securitize and tokenization, no surprise. But you also have trillion-dollar manager Hamilton Lane, which we've seen do products with Securitize in the past. We also saw Aptos, we saw Circle, we saw many other platforms. I think Paxos too, and TradeWeb and a few others also participate in this deal. So it's a huge monster round. I think it's a great signal for the whole industry. This is what brings hype and interest and appeal into investing in this sector, right? If I can't invest in Securitize, what else is out there that I might be able to invest in if I missed that on this round, right? There's plenty of money out there looking to also invest in the infrastructure. This $47 million isn't just good for Securitize, Kyle. I think it's amazing for the whole industry.
This is a huge war chest from Securitize, who has already raised a ton of capital. And so major shout out to Securitize and Carlos for pulling off this funding round, because as anybody else in the industry would tell you, it ain't easy to raise. It's certainly not easy to raise $50 million.
I'll be sure to ask him what he's got planned at Tokenize this next week, because of course he's pulling up. I got a nice little fireside chat planned with him.
That's going to be great.
I am also very curious to see what the next BlackRock products are after the liquidity fund, no doubt. But as I was saying, this is good for the industry because also Bakkt just announced a $9.5 million raise from Gnosis. Gnosis is the very popular chain that actually we usually refer to for RealT because they use them for their infrastructure. But also the Blockchain Founders Fund and many others participated in this, and Bakkt has been doing a great job internationally. Another leader in the RWA space, I believe Switzerland-based, but
Correct.
They've been doing deals all over. Kyle, again, great news here. This is what I want to see every week. More and more companies raising money. That money will be put to building better infrastructure, to getting more people to tokenize, to making more efficient markets for RWAs. Gets me tingling.
Yeah, Switzerland is just a fantastic jurisdiction to operate. As we've talked about here on the show before, they have very light rules and restrictions around swapping of securities as long as you're kind of in their semi-permissioned network. They really don't have a lot of hand-holding with respect to who can do things. So it allows for a lot of flexibility with these types of assets, which has been crucial for RealT's success and presumably exciting to see for Bakkt to jump on that bandwagon as well. Also, friends of the show, Mom Palaran, are out there crushing it. So great to see that. Another fundraise. It ain't easy to do in this market, especially in Europe, where there's a little bit less activity on the venture side. And Herwig, into number 4 for me, I've got a county in Massachusetts, Quincy to be specific. They tapped JP Morgan to launch a $10 million municipal bond using blockchain technology. I actually wrote a thesis paper in university talking about tokenized municipal bonds. Really cool to see. I think this makes total sense as a issuance property, and they're getting JP Morgan involved in the deal. They're using the Onyx blockchain. We've covered that on the show many times. JP Morgan winning our company of the year for all of the developments that they've made in the space. And this is a new vertical for them, is to work with municipalities and governments to issue financial securities on chain because of all the benefits and transparency that comes with it. Their goal here, obviously, is to reduce costs, enhance liquidity, and shorten those settlement times. So this is pretty exciting to see because this is a U.S., governmental, not federal government, but this is a local government taking advantage of blockchain and capital markets. And this is JP Morgan embracing that opportunity. This is just another snowball that continues to roll and roll and roll.
I mean, marking that new formal launch, if you will, of the digital debt services, right? It goes to show you that JP Morgan's been thinking about this so big. They understand that tokenization is going to change all finance. And they said, hey, we're going to go after all of finance, already doing trillions on their repo markets, already collateralizing stuff on their network, as well as a couple of other products they've launched like Link and other things. But this one is really cool. I would love to see more municipalities tap into it. The fact that it's JP Morgan, we know Consensus, we know others have talked about how they want to help municipal bonds, but this is JP Morgan. So now for a city CFO, for a budget person to be able to actually say, I can talk to JP Morgan about doing this. Wow, you got great comfort, great security. You know it's going to work well. And of course, the Onyx team, they'll have somebody here at Tokenize this next week. With that, though, I'm going to end on our last little topic for today, Kyle. Untangled, launching a $6 million private credit pool on CeLO. Now, this was structured in Luxembourg under their securities regulations. And specifically, the debt ceiling is at 6 million, but they mention that it could actually be going as large as 100 million euros, around 107 million, right, with their partner Carmen. But it hasn't been finalized, so it's not clear. But institutional asset managers Fasanara Capital and the Credit Collective, which is a CeLO-led community ecosystem organization, they were early investors in this facility. So you can already obviously go see this on chain. And the last thing I guess is, this is, again, tapping into debt, folks. This is the bigger trend that we're going to see more and more, specifically outside of the US, I think, where you're going to have crypto natives as well as traditional investors be able to tap into these now RWA, real world asset backed facilities, credit pools that have a lot more, interest, less risk, I should say. There's obviously still levels of risk, but the fact that it's asset backed allows you to better, I think, participate in some of these credit opportunities, which typically used to only be for institutions, for the rich, not something that everyday people could get access to.
Totally agree, Herwig. The industry keeps growing. Wall Street without walls is the future of this industry. Blockchain continues to grow, billions and billions of dollars coming on chain every week.
Well, instead of us yapping about it, why don't we hear from the actual industry, moving on into our next interview with Reental.
Great. Well, everyone, we're joined today with Fernando Ors from Reental. Fernando, how are you today?
Thank you very much, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Really, we wanted to, showcase Reental a bit today for our audience to get to know you. I know there's an exciting, announcement, if you will, that we'll cover in a bit. But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about what Reental does and your role in the tokenization space.
Wonderful. Well, let me just to introduce myself, because I have been decades managing syndicated investment funds. And after that period, that we decided that instead of making the rich richer, we decided better to make investing in real estate accessible to everyone with just 2 clicks and a minimum investment of $100. No, that it is basically the advantages of this new blockchain world and the tokenization. So in our last 3 years, we have provided to our investors cash on cash annual returns from 13% to 30%. We are providing them monthly passive incomes from our renting business model. And first time in history, the 24/7 liquidity, thanks to blockchain, its smart contracts, and our tokenization business model, and our peer-to-peer marketplace too, by the way.
Makes sense. Those are some high returns that you're, sharing with us. Where are some of these properties located?
We began in Spain. Afterwards, we moved the holding to Delaware. Nowadays, we got the headquarters in Miami. And in fact, we are one of the few, if not the only one, Web3 real estate investment platform that got presence in the 3 principal continents. So Spain, United States, Mexico, Dominican Republic, and approximately probably 2 new countries, but basically in all those areas where we can identify good opportunities.
Makes sense. You guys have a community that has grown for Reental, people that are looking to invest into some of these assets. How do you connect with your community? Tell us a little bit maybe about the RealT token itself and how that plays a role in your ecosystem.
Well, in fact, it's true that nowadays we are, in fact, leader in tokenized assets under management in Europe and Latin America, and a global leader in the Spanish-spoken market. And we got a community of over 16,000 users from more than 80 countries. And consequently, we have become the investing platform with the quickest growth in Europe and the Americas. And by the way, operating with the legal frameworks of both Spain and United States. In Spain, we just offer syndicated loans through security token offerings and according with the standards of the National Security Market Commission. And here in the United States, we are also adhering to the Security Exchange Commission regulations and acquiring each property through a new LLC. And consequently, this structure provides regulatory compliance for both accredited U.S. investors through Rule 506C and international investors through the Regulation S. But what I would say that Reental stands out is basically for our accessibility, since we are allowing those investments from $100, and also these tailored international investment options, since from a user-friendly platform, you just can select and you can invest and disinvest, by the way, with just few clicks and that 24/7 capability. And what I would say is that what people love is our monthly passive incomes that you receive automatically thanks to our smart contracts. And that has allowed us to achieve a network effect and traction. And in fact, we got a record 35% quarterly growth with basically word of mouth, since we have not invested in marketing yet. But as you are saying also, we have just launched our IDO, our utility tokens. It has been a very successful one with return of almost 100% in just a few months, or 4 times return for those who invested in our pre-sale campaign. And obviously, it's another highlight among our unique features, since we are providing this utility token, vaults for reinvestments, the P2P marketplace, and so on. So it's this sum of different peculiarities that it is increasing our community without investing yet in any brand awareness or similar.
Got it. So you did mention, that is a utility token. From our previous conversations, it sounds like a community maybe wanted to participate in Reental itself, right? The company. So I noticed you guys have a crowdfund happening on Republic. Can you just share a little bit of information on that?
Yeah, exactly. So what happened, the first financing round that we had was very unexpected because we began to share with our community, okay, guys, we think that we have achieved to a moment that we should just bring some VCs and private equities companies who were interested in joining us. And they told us, hey, guys, and why, before asking someone else, why don't you ask us, the own retail investors, if we could be interested in investing in equity in this case? And that is how we cover half of the first round. That was obviously a wonderful indication that apparently they were happy with how we were managing the company. And we just created a special purpose vehicle that after achieving the amount we needed, we closed it. And many of them just requested us, hey, I would like to invest too. How can we do that? So that's why we decided to use, in this case, the Republic crowdfunding platform in order just to give them this additional opportunity to continue acquiring not only our security tokens, that it is the real estate investment, the utility token, the RealT, but also those people interested in joining us with this growth of the tokenization world. We are providing them the possibility of investing in equity again for the following few days, with a minimum ticket of $300. That it was also our intention to make accessible to anyone to participate also in the equity of the company.
Yeah, totally understand. You guys have multiple offerings going on here, multiple things to look into. Obviously, due to Reg CF, we can't go too much into detail into this offering. So for anyone that's interested, go ahead on Republic and look out for Reental's offering. But moving from there, for anyone that might be considering it, Fernando, what are some future plans for Reental? What are you guys looking to accomplish in the next, say, 12 to 24 months?
Well, what I would highlight is in the following weeks, probably we are also be the first real estate investing platform in the world offering collateralized loans in the AVE protocol with our security tokens as collateral. So it will allow our investors with this new leverage functionality basically to double their returns without assuming additional risk. So if they are already achieving always more than 2 digits, from 11 to 13, in some cases up to 30% in some of the projects, in this case, you are going to be able to, in some cases, to duplicate with this DeFi capability that, of course, we will also teach our investors how to do so. We are also going to become, by the way, the only Web3 investing platform with a Web2 user experience with our new wallet that we are calling a human wallet, in order just to simplify this entry barrier for those investors who are not crypto yet. And as additional future plans, we are also considering an expansion into new areas or countries, additionally to Spain, Mexico, Dominican Republic, and United States. We are developing the possibility of making monthly transfers from your bank account. We got in mind also index funds with all the different properties we got. We are already negotiating potential new alliances with real estate investment trusts, and of course, a lot of M&A agreements to complement our organic growth and boost our global expansion. So what I would say is basically up to now, we have already shown that with just word of mouth, we are capable of increasing 10 times of our revenues year after year, achieving positive EBITDA, by the way, the last 2 years. And we are duplicating our capital raising, achieving, in fact, the highest community engagement, because, by the way, I didn't mention that most of our properties are sell out in minutes or hours. So, and we got one of the highest reinvestment rates, since 92% of our investors reinvest regularly with us. And consequently, what we are just taking care especially of the positive feedback of the user satisfaction. For example, we got an excellent, I think it's 4.9 over 5 stars in Trustpilot, and that kind of focus is the number one, and obviously to continue with those top cash-on-cash returns. No, that it's the idea. And in our pipeline, we are more than comfortable nowadays because we consider that if we continue with this community support and in this social revolution that means how to use in a smarter way the savings, no, of all of us, we are very optimistic that the revenue and the profit over the next few years. In fact, we got an expectation to overcome the 1 billion mark of raised capital and positively impact to more than 9 million families by 2030. That is basic purpose of the team.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I think you guys have a really cool roadmap ahead. Collateralized loans, we've seen it been done, and I think it's a great way to add a liquidity option for your investors, as well as the other great stuff you guys are working on. So I'm excited to see all that progress, Fernando. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it, and I'm sure your audience or our audience will be checking you guys out on Republic. But in the meantime, we'll be moving on to the next section of the show.
Hello. We've got one last amazing interview today on the show with, of course, the co-CEO and co-founder, Remy Jacobson from RealT, of course. So glad to have you. How are you today?
Thank you for having me back. Doing great. Very exciting times for RealT.
Very exciting times. We talked about recently on the show how you guys are doing a Genesis drop with the REG token, the Real Token Ecosystem Governance Token. Right? The REG token. Remy, tell us in your own words what people should know about this Genesis drop.
For now, it's the first Genesis drop. Every wallet that have worked within the RealT ecosystem has qualified for 100 REGs drop, which at today value represent around $2 million or a little bit above 20,000 wallets have been active with RealT in the past 5 years. And we're in the price discovery phase, and it was dropped. It's a free token that was given to the community, and it's freely traded on all the DEX. This token will give right to votes, right to decision. RealT is working towards full decentralization. This cannot happen. And I shouldn't say RealT. Real Token Network is going towards full decentralization, and RealT will be a player and an actor in the Real Token Network ecosystem, such as anybody else who wishes to join at this point. We are going for full decentralization.
That's, I think, something we have to clarify for those watching, that, folks, RealT today as the technology platform that has tokenized hundreds of U.S. real estate properties and sold them to, as you just said, 20,000 individuals around that. But what you're saying now is the next step is actually to decentralize. And we noted that you recently raised $5 million for RealT itself. I believe 3 million in 10 minutes and the full 5 in like an hour, I think you said, which is incredible. Yes. But to this point, to clarify, you have raised 5 million for RealT, which will continue to support the Real Token Network, which is now going fully decentralized.
That's correct. For now, RealT is the spear of the head of the spear for the Real Token Network, but that will change as votes comes along. And RealT will be one of the providers of the ecosystem and one of the actors. What do I mean by actors? Is anybody who wishes to launch a RealT copy platform could do it by interfering within the decentralized ecosystem. But we need to lead the effort for the next year or so as the voting takes place, as we need to, somebody needs to head the DAO. But that will change very quickly, we hope, with a very, very active community, very engaged in RealT, thankfully.
And we've seen some really great DAOs and fully decentralized applications already. So I know there's been a lot to sort of follow in best practices. I have no doubt you guys will do the same. Of course, we're going to dig into it a little bit more next week, right, Remy? Because I get to host you in Miami. And of course, we thank you, RealT, everybody, folks. They are our title sponsor for Tokenize This, helping make this event possible for the industry. But yeah, we got some exciting stuff to talk about next week, don't we?
We're going to go into details on a lot of things of RealT through next week. We'll make ourselves available, of course, during the speech and on sites for answering questions, as well as announcing some exciting development coming to RealT as well.
Absolutely amazing. Folks, the Reg Token white paper is available if you want to go check it out. But meanwhile, thanks for coming on the show, Remy. We'll talk to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wow, I don't even know which interview was best, and it certainly makes it tough, Herwig, for us to pick our companies of the week this week. We had some great interviews, we had great headlines, and there was even more news that didn't even make the cut, that maybe a company sneaks in to the company of the week. You never know, it's happened before. So Herwig, it's episode 235. We've had 4 different companies of the year. We're going to have number 5 coming up at the end of this year. Maybe one of them will be at Tokenize This here in Miami next week. We haven't made our decision yet because we've only been halfway through the year. But as we call the company of the week, you get a chance to win your company of the year award. So this award is a pretty big deal. I can't wait to hear who you chose this week.
And Kyle, there's a chance because of who I choose this week that this year, at the end of this year, I should say, we may actually have a repeat winner because I got to give it to Securitize. It's the easy answer here. I mean, 47 million from the biggest asset managers in the world, as well as TradFi kind of applications, as well as blockchain foundations, as well as just major crypto firms. You got to give it to them for that. And of course, they're the ones behind. They are kind of like BlackRock's chosen darling for their tokenization work, right? So the fact that BITL went ahead and became the largest tokenized fund, of course, a lot of credit there, and most of that credit goes to BlackRock. But it would have never been possible without Securitize. And for sure, Securitize has their whole, BD team and their whole brokerage that's helping out with this. So at the end of the day, it takes Carlos's forward thinking and access to the industry to help make Securitize what it is. And so because of that, it's just hard for me not to say that they are the company of the week for both raising $47 million and helping BlackRock and to be the powering the largest tokenized fund in RWAs.
Couldn't agree more, Herwig. They had our headline 1 and 2 in our initial market movement segment. They have crushed it on the liquidity, the buy side. When I talk with companies in the industry, all we talk about is how do we activate the buy side? How do we start to drive more liquidity into this industry? And Securitize, hand over fist, is bringing millions and millions of dollars into the industry. I think that's very much.
Kyle, did you also pick Securitize?
Well, they've crushed it this week, but for the sake of bringing in a different name and giving a highlight to a smaller company that's also doing what they can to drive liquidity into the industry, my choice this week is Bakkt, the Swiss-based tokenization company that just raised $9.5 million, led by Gnosis, who is bringing private tokenization services to asset managers on chain. I just was excited to see another small company driving the fresh perspectives, because while Securitize represents the old guard, if you will, having fresh voices, fresh faces to take on new challenges, I think is also an amazing opportunity, and wanted to shout out Bakkt for all the work that they're doing and the success that they've had so far.
I love to see it. They are really coming onto the scene these last few years, coming in big, and I see big things for them as well, Kyle. I think that's a great choice. And with that is our show this week. Thank you to everybody on LinkedIn and on Twitter, on YouTube who's watching right now. But of course, we do go live, try to go live on Fridays every week in the afternoon. But in the meantime, go to stm.co. Come check it out. Go see what's happening. There's so much activity now. See how BITL is doing against Benji. See what Bakkt products are out there. All of that good stuff. And of course, we really hope to see you in Tokenize This next week, don't we, Kyle?
Yeah, you know what? When we've gone to conferences in the past, we have heard before that people said they didn't think we were real people because they've only seen us on digital. And I can tell you for a fact, we are real. We do live in Miami, and you're going to love us when you meet us, hopefully. The vibes are usually pretty good. So we can't wait to see you. It's awesome. Go to summit.stm.co because you're going to be shocked and impressed in the best way at the list of guests and attendees that are going to be there. All the biggest banks, all the biggest blockchains, all the biggest ATSs. Anybody in the industry is coming to Miami next week.
Well, with that, Kyle, you know what I'm going to say. Happy tokenizing.